You're next. I hear it's the most difficult party to become a member of. No. Just as a light dispels darkness, we traditionally begin a ceremony with the auspicious lighting of the lamp. And just as the light dispels darkness, we hope to bring sight to the visually impaired. And I think all the doctors here present associated with Aditya Jyot I've seen do fantastic work in bringing this forward. Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital was established in the year 1990 by Dr. S. Natarajan at Dadar and has now expanded into a 4-story hospital in the heart of central Mumbai. Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital is the only hospital in India to be a full member of the World Association of Eye Hospitals. Mr. Ravi Chandran, who is the current CEO of Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital, will now address us about the hospital. Welcome, Mr. Ravi Chandran.
Topic. Good evening. Warm welcome to all of you. We are so honored by your presence in this Professor Dr. Sundaran and Mrs. Kamala Sundaran Endowment Award function. Oh, it's coming. Takes time. Go forward. Jyot Eye Hospital is in the year of 24-year service. Next year we're going to celebrate our 25th year anniversary. And we have almost 100 years combined experience and with the 3 generations of ophthalmologists behind it. And this is one of the few hospitals which has offered all the services which associate with that. And is one of the very few hospitals in Mumbai which offers all the subspecialty of ophthalmology, like retina vitreous service, cataract, cornea, neuro-ophthalmology, and genetics, and also pediatric ophthalmology, and all the diagnostic one. And we do have a wet lab training center for the people to train among them. Under education, we train our postgraduate doctors, and we almost trained around 1,000 ophthalmologists in fellowships and advanced. And we are running a Bachelor of Optometric program, a degree program, in association with Yashwant Chauhan University. And we also run comprehensive fellowship programs. And we have almost around 14 full-time consultants and 6 trainees. And we are an ISO 9001 certified eye hospital. And we are the only full member in India of World Association of Eye Hospitals. And also, we are the only eye hospital in Mumbai to be accredited by National Accreditation Board of Hospitals that under the Quality Council of India. And some of the achievements, last month we opened Frankfurt Mumbai Ophthalmologic Dry and Wet Lab, inaugurated by Dr. Matt Frank Koch, Head of Department of Vitreoretinal Surgery at Johann Wolfgang Goethe University in Germany. And we have signed an MOU with Maastricht University to offer PhD programs. Around 4 of our Prussian ophthalmologists are signing for the PhD programs. We also have an MOU with, for stem cell research with NCRM Japan and IOBA from Spain to offer stem cell research in ophthalmology. We have an MOU with Second Sight to artificial retina, which can help people with RP to get hopes of getting a sight. And we are, as a private hospital, we not only serve the people, we also into research, which is going to help on the clinical trials, which will help the future and get a lot of earth-breaking ideologies. And some of the trials we are doing about is in myopia, then in AMD, and some of these trials we are doing with leading pharma companies. And we do also, part of our corporate social responsibility, we serve free eye camps, we serve the poor, we offer them free cataract and as well as retina surgeries. And these are some of our things. And we also go door by door to check rather than they come to the hospital. We also have a mobile van with the help of Novartis, also on our own. And we have a foundation, Aditya Jyot Twinkling Eye Foundation, which is running a clinic in Dharavi. Also, we have with around 20 social workers going door to door in Dharavi, trying to test them and bring them over for further teachers. And we are doing a research and further development in diabetic retinopathy. And we are helping Mumbai to fight diabetic through our own way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ravichandran. Now we come to the main event of today's program. Of course, Dr. Natarajan will take us through the details of the award, today's award. But Dr. Natarajan, of course, who needs no introduction, known as one of a world-renowned vitreoretinal surgeon, awarded one of the highest awards in India, the Padma Shri, in April 2013. Dr. Natarajan owes his success to his Mata Pita, Guru, Mitra and Deva, a third generation ophthalmologist. He counts his father and grandfather as having been strong influences in his life, shaping his future. His dad, I have had the honor of knowing his mother and father, and his mom, Mrs. Kamala Sundaram, is one person I have known her, and she was a person of great grit and a person who had a perennial smile on her face, regardless of all her hardships. I've seen her personally go to the hospital every single day and show such a wonderful, brave face to the world, always hardworking and always happy. I'm sure she was one of the greatest supports to Dr. Natarajan. Professor Dr. N.S. Sundaram is the second generation ophthalmologist with more than 50 years service in the community, has helped thousands of people to get vision. Professor Dr. N.S. Sundaram, MB, MS, DO, continues to work at 84 as rector of Aditya Jyot Institute of Optometry. He counts his, he's a wonderful human being also, and I think it is because of him today that I'm here. I would like to now call on Dr. Natarajan to tell us more about the award.
Good evening, everybody. On behalf of, where is the remote? On behalf of Aditya Jyot Hospital, I'm happy to welcome you all, and I would like to say, like, I dedicate my life to Mata, Pita, Guru, Mitra, and Deva, and I have put it in my book called You Can Do It. Mata is mother, Pita is father, and Mitra is my friend Shivanandan, he's here, and Guru is my Dr. Badrinath, and Deva is last, like the God. So I think everything is created by your own hands, and that's why I salute them, and that's the reason I've done this program. And I have my friend and Director of Research, Dr. Kumar here, who is the main person who continuously behind me to start this oration. And I had a lot of difficulties, and then finally, with the help of our CEO, Ravichandran, we finally started the oration last year, and the first oration went to John Prakash, the International Director of National Eye Institute, Washington, Bethesda, and we have the second orator whom will be coming to, and also from the same region, Baltimore, John Hopkins. And here we have my grandfather, Dr. S. Nataraja Pillai, who was born in 1900 and lived till 1977 and settled in Madurai. And then following him, my father became an ophthalmologist, and myself born in 57 and finally became an ophthalmologist. All three of us were trained at Government Eye Hospital, which is the second eye hospital in the world, which is in Egmore, Chennai, and I think the third is New York Eye and Ear Infirmary. And we are proud that all of us were studied in the same alma mater, and we are going to celebrate 200 years in 2019. And this is my late Dr. S. Nataraja Pillai, and he was born on 1st May 1900 in Palayamkottai in Tirunelveli district, and he studied in John's College, and then later he did his medical course in Tanjore Medical School and medical service at he joined in the Madras Presidency, and he started the Department of Ophthalmology in a place called Tanjore, where the Marathas ruled Tamil Nadu, the Shivaji's brother. And then in his name, thankful to the Vitiratam Society of India, we have instituted Dr. S. Nataraja Pillai Oration Award, and that's a contribution for medical knowledge dissemination by Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital. We had 2001 Neil Kelly, and 2003 Professor Chandra from US, John Heckenlively from US, Dr. Vinod Lekhanpal from Baltimore, and Boris Cooperman from US, Frank Kosch from Germany, Klaus Eckhart from Germany, and then Jerry Shields in 2010. The next one. Okay. And this is Dr. Sundaram is here, my father, and he's an example of success comes from hard, devoted, and dedicated work. And he was born on 19 January 1927 in a southern tip of India, which is very close to Kanyakumari, a place called Kulasegarapatnam. And he retired as the head of the Government Eye Hospital in Chennai. He was the professor of ophthalmology in Madras Medical College, and during his tenure in the eye hospital, he had 9 special clinics in those days. And myself, Dr. Kumar Manikvel, his mentor, the genetic professor, and also my father did the first eye presentation on ocular genetics, which was presented at the Asia Pacific Academy of Ophthalmology in 1985 in Delhi. He has performed over 30,000 cataract surgeries in those days, and he has done more than 3 lakh patients refraction, and he has mastered the Duke Elder's refraction book, and that's the reason I thought I'm not fit to do refraction. I took up vitreoretinal surgery. And he always found mistakes in my refraction. And he has conducted several eye camps, and I'm happy to say in 1960s my grandfather did eye camps, and in 70s my father did, and I also worked in the eye camps, and there are many eye camps which is, I think, revolutionized the prevention of blindness due to cataract in India. And he also organized eye exhibition. This is a standalone exhibition in Chennai, which is there in the Tamil Nadu Science Center, where government of Tamil Nadu has given a place, and it's called the NSS Eye Corner. And Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital has employed an optometrist who's doing daily free eye checkup for the students who visit the Science Center. And this is the exhibition place, and that's the eye hospital which you see there, which is more than 150 years old. And these are the exhibition center in Chennai. And he has authored several books, and he has given a Tamil book to charity. He's here from Singapore National Eye Center, and she's promised that she'll keep it in the library there. And he has got several awards. The main is the Lifetime Achievement Award of the Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, and Dr. G. Venkatasamy Award. Dr. G. Venkatasamy is a legend in ophthalmology, and where even American Academy of Ophthalmology celebrated his death because his contribution to ophthalmology is a lifetime work which is done. And his mission is vision is our mission. And he always says that nobody should go blind just because people are not aware of eye care and eye diseases. And that's why I say that nobody should go blind just because they don't have money in the pocket. And that's why on his insistence, we have started an eye care project in the slums, and we showed it to Charity, and Charity has become the chairman of the World Association of Eye Hospitals, and we are glad with their help. The entire World Association of Eye Hospital was here last week, and this whole week we have doctors from all over the world visiting Aditya Jyot, and I am happy that at this time we are doing this program. And he is presently the director of Aditya Institute of Optometry, and also the founder for the Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Lights, where he has taken the place on rental. In spite of knowing all the politicians, I am not able to get a place on our own, but still we are paying rent and doing free service to Dharavi. And it's a not-for-profit body aiming to redress the suffering of low-income groups, marginalized population living in rural and urban slums and tribal areas through free eye camps and free eye treatment. And there are about 45 million blind in the world, and 1 in 4 blind in the world live in India, and that's why program like this. 50% of the low vision is due to lack of proper eye care checkup and correction. Age-related and lifestyle issues add irreversibly blindness exponentially, and that's diabetic retinopathy, and that's what our speaker is going to speak today. And these are the activities we have done in the past 6 years, and we have screened more than 100,000 people. And the various projects are on diabetic retinopathy. I'm happy the entire team is here. On children refractive error, Mumbai diabetic retinopathy project, free eye camps, almost 2 to 3 a day, 3 a week, and also eye bank facilities. And these are the various screening eye camps in Mumbai. Somebody can ask why do in an affluent city, which is the financial capital of India, but still we have the lowest income group and the highest income group, and the world's richest guy and the world's richest man having the biggest residence in the world is in Mumbai. But still, we have to serve the poor people here. So our vision for the future, to run a 5,000 square feet comprehensive eye care center with an operation theatre facility in Dharavi slum or its vicinity, and have various centers which will be a feeding center to combat blindness or prevent blindness. And So I wanted to quote a Tirukural. I'm reading this in English. The good which a father can do to his son is to prepare him for a prominent role in the assembly of the learned. And that's what he has done. And I think I wanted everybody to give a standing ovation to my father. Thank you very much. And I also want to tell another Tirukural about my mother, which Shivanandan is the best to quote that, which says that the mother's tears when whatever pain she underwent during the delivery, but when a son is achieved, and I think in the last part of her life, I had the opportunity because of my father. He said, I will bring her to Mumbai because you are working in Mumbai and you cannot come and live in Chennai where they hail from. And she was paralytic from the year 2007, and because of the second paralytic attack, stroke, she could not get up, she could not move, and she always liked to dress well, and she was a well-dressed person. And there was a poetess 2000 years back called Avayar. She said, a man is respected or a woman is respected by 50% by the look and the dress and 50% of the character. And then she had that 100% qualities. She had beautiful flowers with her all the time, which you can see on the photograph here. And she was in a wheelchair, and she was an honorary employee of the hospital. She came on rounds daily to the hospital, and I'm very proud that she went and found that made sure the hospital was clean, because I had kept her as the monitor the cleanliness of the hospital. And I'm glad even during the 2001 survey by the Outlook magazine, we had the highest marks for the clean eye hospital in the country. And thanks to Shivanandan, who is always my strongest constructive critic I have, to continuously have improvements in the patient care. So I dedicate this award to my parents. I don't get it here. So and from even though my mother was not educated, she's from a small village. I think she gave me everything to be a good son, and I think she made sure that she's brought up a good son. So from whatever I am today is because of her, because I always brought friends almost daily and told her to cook, and she did that. And till the time, even when she passed away a year back, I think she was always happy to see, host the friends. And I should be grateful to my father and mother because I was an introvert. Nobody can believe that. And I was a crying child. So because my father could not pass several exams when he did his master's degree because he was tensed and he could not open his mouth. And in medical examination, we have viva. If you don't answer any question, if you don't open your mouth, you will be failed, however intelligent you are. So to make me an extrovert, he took me to All India Radio program. He made me work as a volunteer, and he also made me work as a room boy for his clinic. And I proudly worked. Sometimes patients used to give me tips, which I didn't take. And I'm happy that I didn't take any bribe those days too. And when I left him and joined Dr. Badrinath, he told me that you told me that you will start an eye hospital together, but you want to leave me. He said, even though I feel bad, he allowed me to go. And even when Dr. Badrinath wanted me to continue with him, I told him you have to take my father's permission, and then my father gave me permission to take up vitreoretinal surgery in '84. And I think I'm glad I took up that specialty in that year, again thanks to my father. Next slide. And this Endowment Award in my parents' name recognizes individuals who have made exemplary contribution in any field of science or education that help alleviate the suffering of humankind. So the first Professor N.S. Sundaram and Mrs. Kamala Sundaram Endowment Award was awarded to Dr. Gyan John Prakash. And Dr. Gyan John Prakash, PhD, MBA, presently holds the distinguished position as the Associate Director of International Programs at the National Eye Institute, National Institute of Health, United States. Originally from India, Dr. Prakash has an illustrious career of working in the field of medicine, holds a PhD in medical microbiology from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and an MBA in pharmaceutical And this is my father and mother on the 50th marriage anniversary, which was a few years back, when they just came from Chennai, and they lived with me in this small house, and where I was happy to spend the last 4 years of her life with me, and I think I at least had breakfast with her daily the days I was in Mumbai. And I'm thankful to Dr. Kumar Manikvel, who again helped me in getting John Prakash for this endowment oration, and thankful to our Minister for Home Affairs, Mr. Sushil Kumar Shinde, who gave the award oration last year. Thank you very much.
I would like to welcome Mr. D. Sivanandan, former Director General of Police, Mumbai, who's also a founding member of Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital, and I think most importantly, one of the best friends of Dr. Natarajan. Yeah. The best friend, I'm sorry, not one of them. And I would like Dr. Natarajan to come back and give us an introduction of Dr. Neil Bressler, Chief of the Retina Division and Professor of Ophthalmology, Wilmer Eye Institute, Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine.
So, Dr. Neil Bressler is the Chief Retina Division, Professor of Ophthalmology, the Wilmer Eye Institute, the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. And I don't know how many of you see in the internet, the Johns Hopkins still becomes the first in the best hospitals in the world, and not only in the US, for several years. So like a big clap to him. And Dr. Neil Bressler has become a member of the Wilmer Eye Institute's faculty since 1988, and is currently the chief of the Retina Division and the inaugural James P. Gills Professor of Ophthalmology. He specializes in retinal diseases with special interest in diabetic retinopathy and macular degeneration. He is a world-known authority on macular degeneration and diabetic retinopathy, and as you know, he is also the president of the Macular Society, which is an exclusive society. And for the people who do not know about the eye, macula is the center part of the eye, and actually the eye itself is so small with a diameter of about 2.5 centimeters. In that, 1.5 millimeters is the macula, which is responsible for the vision, what you're all enjoying, the acuity of vision, the brightness of vision, and the color vision, and he's the master of that. And then Dr. Bressler's main research interests have been retinal diseases, including age retinal macular degeneration and diabetic retinopathy. He has chaired several sessions and NIH-sponsored multicentric trials, authored almost 300 peer-reviewed publications. He is the past chair of the NIH-sponsored Diabetic Retinopathy Clinical Research Network, and which is one of the study in the world, and was responsible for the guidelines, policies, protocol development, as well as implementation, and to facilitate network operations in a way that maintains academic integrity and optimal clinical trial performance. He also has chaired the National Eye Institute's Data and Safety Monitoring Committee for Intramural Clinical Trials and the FDA Ophthalmic Devices Panel. Dr. Bressler is currently Editor-in-Chief of the JAMA Ophthalmology. So I herewith present Dr. Neil Bressler here. Can I invite my father? Can somebody bring my father and Neil and also Mr. Shivanandan to the stage? Can I have the scroll? So I will read the scroll, and my father and Shivanandan will give the scroll and the award to Neil Bressler. You can bring him to the... Can I read? What do we... Can you play the... Can you put the scroll? Give it to me. Dr. Neil Bressler has been a member of the... No, make him go there. Dr. Neil Bressler has been a member of the Wilmer Eye Institute's faculty since 1988 and is currently Chief of the Retina Division and the inaugural James P. Gills Professor of Ophthalmology. He specializes in retinal diseases with special interests in diabetic retinopathy and macular degeneration. And Dr. Bressler's main research interests have been collaborative efforts in clinical trials of common retinal diseases, including age-related macular degeneration and diabetic retinopathy. He has authored more than 300 peer-reviewed publications and is a past chair of the NIH-sponsored Diabetic Retinopathy Clinical Research Network. May I request Dr. Susan also to join us on the stage? And Dr. Bressler is currently Editor-in-Chief of JAMA Ophthalmology. He is the recipient of the Macular Society Rosenthal Award and J. Donald M. Gass Medal, American Society of Retina Specialists, Gertrude Pyron Award, an Honor Award, Helen Keller Foundation Award, American Academy of Ophthalmology Senior Achievement Award, and Gold Fellow in the RO Fellow class of 2010. And Aditya Jyot is proud to give this scroll of honor to Dr. Neil Bressler for his tireless efforts in the fight against blindness, signed by my dad, Professor N.S. Sundaram. And this is the Professor N.S. Sundaram and Mrs. Kamala Sundaram Endowment Award, proudly given to Dr. Neil Bressler. But I think by accepting this, Dr. Neil Bressler has honored India, and I'm thankful to him for accepting the award because he has received several awards which is in stature much higher than what we are giving today. Shiva? Shiva? And I take this opportunity to request Shivanandan to open and release this book on my father and mother, which is very short one, but I would request Shivanandan to release and give it to Neil Bressler and Susan.
Give it. This is a little heavy.
You can start the announcement. Fine, என்ன படிங்க என்ன படிங்க
அப்படியே
நான் படிச்சுக்கிறேன்.
Now I have to work. Please.
I have to introduce you.
That's okay.
I now request Dr. Neil Bressler to give us his endowment lecture on revolution in age-related macular degeneration and diabetic retinopathy management, reducing blindness around the world. Welcome, Dr. Neil Bressler.
Thank you all so much. It really is an absolute honor to be part of this Endowment Award. First of all, you have a wonderful country, and any opportunity to come here, people should jump on it right away. Second, we've known Dr. Natarajan for more than a decade, working in retina with our colleagues around the world. But it's always special when you can come see them in their environment and in the country that they are trying to stamp out blindness and vision problems, because these are universal problems, and it's special to see what they're doing. And finally, if you don't know by now, family is the most important thing to us in the world. Beyond our careers, beyond our jobs. It's great when you enjoy your job, and we love our job, as I know you do and many of our colleagues in the room. But family is even more important. And to combine that with a lecture in honor of your father, in memory of your mother, there's nothing more special. So I am very honored to do that, and I'm going to try to do some justice to what we're doing in trying to work on blindness, not only in the United States, as you will see, but throughout the world. I'm going to discuss with you our attempt to eliminate blindness from one of the most common causes of blindness in the world, including India, and this is blindness from diabetes. And I say that we're so close, but we're still far away, and I think you'll understand that as I walk you through what we've learned about this. I want to point out that our university receives grants from several corporations that are working on blindness, but these are grants controlled by the university. And I want to point out one other disclosure, and that is that I do serve as editor-in-chief, as was mentioned, to JAMA Ophthalmology. But one of the agreements I did in taking this on was that that journal, which is a pretty good peer-reviewed journal in the world in ophthalmology, needed to be available to everyone for free. It's of no value to publish important works that teach our colleagues how to stamp out blindness if you can only read about it in the United States. And yet it's hard to get journals sent across the world in print. So in this age of digital media, the agreement was, I'll work very hard on the journal, and the AMA has to make this for free around the world, and it is. So you can go to jnreader.com. That stands for Journal Network, JAMAnetworkreader.com, and you can read everything as soon as it's online and available to anyone who has a subscription. Now, it only stays there until it comes out in the print edition, but it's usually online for several months. Then it comes out in the print edition. And then if it comes offline, it's available again within a year that it was first online. So when new information comes out, it is available to everybody in the world, and I think that's how it should be. Now, the problem with diabetes is summarized on this slide. There are, right now, 347 million people around the world who have diabetes. It's a very common condition. The prevalence is highest among those who are between 40 and 59 years old. That is the heart of someone's lifetime when their children are growing up, when they are trying to assume leadership positions in their work, or when they're just trying to support the family. And about half of the people who have diabetes in the world do not know that they have it. So one of our challenges is to get out to the world, and we have to identify who has diabetes before it causes substantial damage to their bodies. Because if we just think about the eye alone, 15 years after the diagnosis of diabetes, about 2% of these 350 million people, if you do the math, that's 7 million people, become blind. And 10%, that's about 35 million people, develop severe vision impairment. So this is the magnitude of the problem. This is a major public health problem around the world. Now, we anticipate it's going to go up about 4% by the time we get to 2030 because there are likely going to be some good things happening. Awareness, we're talking about it right now. We have a lot of scientists working on this around the world. But that will only solve part of the problem because if you look at certain parts of the world, and India is included among them, they are going to see the greatest increase in the percentage of people who have diabetes and then who are at risk of losing vision from diabetes around the world. And it's going to increase in the number of people who are over the age of 65. And as people live longer, this is a bigger and bigger problem to deal with. Now, there are many factors that are dealing with this. Obesity is just one of them. There are other risk factors as well. And it's likely that this 4% increase is an underestimate of what's going to happen. And I'll show you why. Often the United States has had a lot of innovation in being first with many things. Here's one thing we were first with that we are not proud of, and we show you as a warning so we can work on it elsewhere in the world. In 1994, you can see in the upper left that the orange states here are where about 15% of the population over the age of 40 are obese. Just 15%. But in just 10 years, in 2000, about 1/3 of the states, 25%, are obese. And if you look on the bottom row, that shows you the percentage of people that have diabetes because it's tightly connected to the obesity problem. So that in 1994, about 1/3 of the states, 5% of the people had diabetes. In just 6 years, we had about 1/3 of the states where 7.5% to 10% had diabetes, and the rest of the country, it was 5% to 7% in just 6 years. That's not a change in genetics. That's not a change in diagnosis. That was due, unfortunately, to failing to recognize that diet, while it's convenient and tastes good, when it's fast food, when it's high in fats, can be dangerous to the extreme. Not once a month, not in moderation, but in the extreme. And if we don't educate people, then we'll have the same problem that happened in the United States because, as you can see, how sensitive this is. Let's go back. Okay, let's try that again. Can you push the button forward once? Good, and push it again, please. Great. As you can see, in just 10 years later, what happened was almost the entire nation in the United States, over 25% are obese. Let's see if we can touch this lightly. And what happens is about 1/3 of the states, 10% of the people or more, have diabetes. So this is not happening for any reason other than we failed to recognize the education. I'll tell you the good news is, if you look at the Center for Disease Control in the United States where these data come from, you can see that it's finally leveling off around where it was here at 2010 or 2011. And it's because it took us about 10 years to recognize and about 10 years to get programs out. But it's a warning that this is part of the problem, and we have to get out to the entire population and make sure this is understood so that 350 million doesn't become 450 million or a billion people. Now, one reason that we're so concerned about diabetes is if you survey people who have diabetes, 2 of the top 10 things that they are concerned about are going blind or having other eye problems. And that's because, as has been mentioned earlier, vision is so fundamental to our quality of life. While we are certainly concerned that diabetes can affect the kidney, it can affect the heart, it can affect many other parts of the body, the part that has the greatest impact on diminishing someone's quality of life happens to be the impact on the eyes. We're going to try and go backwards here again. Good. Let's try and go forward just 1. I'll try that again. Can you go forward just 1? All right, I'll touch it. Don't touch it. All right. This shows you, if you ask someone where they value the various diseases that are going on the right-hand side, you can see that the utility value, you don't have to worry about how these are obtained, but the utility value of having a moderate stroke is about 0.73. The utility value of having moderate vision loss is about the same, 0.72. The difference is, if you have diabetes and you lose a moderate amount of vision, that quality of life goes to about a utility value of 0.72. That's the same as someone who has a moderate stroke. People that have moderate strokes, unfortunately, often are in their late 70s or 80s. Someone with diabetes with vision impairment is in their 40s when they reach this value, and that's why we need to eliminate the vision loss from this. It impacts us because we need vision to read, or we need vision to recognize people, and even if you are illiterate, when you lose your vision, you fail to want to interact with everyone around you because you cannot see who's in the room, who you're talking with, or what the interaction is that's going on. So that people who lose vision can just develop dependence on others. They do not like being dependent on others, and they get depressed about being dependent on others. Now, the problem with having diabetes is that over time, about 40%, as we said, will have some damage to their eyes, and that includes about 20% that will have some vision-threatening effect of their diabetes on their eyes. Now, I'd like to explain how we are trying to attack diabetes. And while we have started this attack in some programs in the United States, we are looking to expand this and show the model to the world. So if you think of the eye like a camera, it works like a camera. Light goes right through the cornea. It gets focused by the cornea and then by a lens in the middle cavity of our eye. And then it gets focused on the back wall of the eye. And the lining of the back wall of the eye, for about a millimeter thick, is the retina tissue. This is the light-sensitive tissue that makes a picture of what we see as the light comes into our eye, and it goes down the optic nerve to our brain. Now, if you look in the back part of the eye, the very central 3 millimeters is called the macula. And here's a photograph of it looking straight on. It's a tiny area, but it's specially designed to be able to see fine vision. And unfortunately, it is the macula where a lot of the damage occurs from diabetes. So as you're reading the letters on the top of this slide that says macula, center of the retina, you are using your macula to read that. If you stare at the door, you can still see the slide while you're staring at the door, but you cannot read those letters because the side part of your retina cannot see fine enough to make out letters. And so if you damage the macula, you cannot use the rest of your retina to see. You lose the ability to recognize faces. You lose the ability to read. You lose the ability to function in a lot of ways. It's very sensitive. Can you go forward? You want me to push it? I'll tell you what, so that we don't interrupt, if I can just say next slide, I think it'll be much better. Okay? I'm not sure it'll work. I think we're better off just saying next slide. Okay, can you push to the next slide? Good, and to the next slide. Okay. And push one more. And push one more. Now this shows you one of the main problems from diabetes, and that is having high blood sugar levels causes blood vessels to leak fluid. You can see that because we injected a food coloring dye here. It's fluorescein. And it's leaking out of the blood vessels between the left-hand slide taken 30 seconds after we injected the fluorescein in an arm vein. And then 5 minutes later, you can see the fluorescein leaking out there. Next slide. And this shows you a cross-section of the retina where it has swollen in the center. And if you leave that swelling alone, that swelling, like a dry sponge filling with water, eventually causes destruction to the retina tissue. And this process is called diabetic macular edema. Diabetic because it's from diabetes, macula because it occurs in the center of the retina, that light-sensitive part that we need to read, and edema because it's swollen. Next slide. And then if you can get rid of that edema before the retina has lost a lot of tissue, you might be able to prevent the person from losing more vision, or you might even get some vision back. Next slide. Now, we typically measure the effect of edema by seeing how far someone can read on an eye chart. Ideally, they can read all the way to the bottom line. Next slide. And this would be the 20/20 line. Next slide. But if you have some edema, you might lose the ability to see anything other than larger letters. They have to be bigger. Perhaps your 20/40. Next slide. And this means that it's getting more difficult to drive and read. Next slide. Now what can happen as you go down this chart, next slide, is you can actually continue to lose vision from edema. Push again. Next slide. And it can get down to 20/80 where you probably can no longer drive. You might be able to read headlines in a newspaper. Next slide. And if it gets all the way down to perhaps the bottom of the chart, next slide, down to about, next slide, 2200. At that point, you probably are considered legally blind if this has affected both eyes. Next slide. And so we try to prevent this from happening by identifying when somebody has this swelling or diabetic macular edema. Next slide. And next. Now what happens if you get down to 2200 is you cannot see in the center anymore, and you can't use your side vision to see around that, or you can't recognize faces either. Next slide. And so what we want to do is prevent people from getting to this level of vision by identifying who has this diabetes, who with the diabetes has the swelling, and then treat the swelling. Next slide. And next. We learned a few years ago that there are certain growth factors that are produced in the retina tissue when diabetes damages the blood vessels from high blood sugar levels. So diabetes causes high blood sugar levels. This damages the retina blood vessels and the retina tissue, and they pour out these growth factors. Next slide. And one of these growth factors is called vascular endothelial growth factor, which causes blood vessels to leak, and that's what causes the swelling or the macular edema. Next slide. And so what we'd like to do is figure out how can we get rid of these factors that cause the swelling. Next slide. And one thing we could do is put in anti-growth factors that are antibodies that literally mop up those factors that cause the swelling. Next slide. And when this was identified about 10 years ago, several investigators went to Congress and said, we have this huge problem with diabetes, and we have more people than you realize that are going to have this problem, and we would like you to support and provide some funding to allow us to collaborate with all of our colleagues in the United States and have a network that could take lots of different ideas and rapidly test them within a year of the idea to determine if that will work at getting rid of these damaging factors. Next slide. And so this DRCR network was designed to be a very efficient way of testing treatments that we would invite the entire retina community in the United States to participate in. Next slide. And in fact, as of last week, there were 119 sites involving about 360 ophthalmologists around the United States. This represented 1/3 of every retina practice in the United States is participating in this. Now, it's not every person in each practice, but we have broad representation there, and there's about 1,000 other people working on this. Next slide. And the idea was to rapidly do protocols, and this just shows you the active ones that were going on, labeled A through R, to try and stamp out the problems from diabetes. Next slide. And there are 5 of them that are actually ongoing right now where we are still recruiting people and still doing the follow-up, and those others on the previous slide are ones that we've completed. Next slide. And a lot of this has been published, but like JAMA Network, they're not all published in JAMA Ophthalmology, but they are all available for free, as are most of these slides, because the network helped put many of these together if you just go on the web at drcr.net, because we want to make sure this is available to the world. Next slide. And in fact, all the data are available. So once we complete a study, we deposit the data online for free, and if there are other investigators that have other ideas of what to do with this around the world, there it is for them to work on. And we've had about 1,200 people download the data to do this. Now, it's not something you could download and easily analyze by yourself with an Excel file, but with a good biostatistician. We've had industry and investigators and university people around the world use these data to help identify other ways of trying to treat diabetic retinopathy. Next slide. And we've had collaboration with industry. We don't have the drugs to test this. We have to go to the industry and we say, we'd like you to give us the drugs that we may want to test. This could otherwise cost the government tens of millions of dollars to be able to do this. But we go to the industry and say, it's only if the network can have complete control. And industry may not want to do that, but we've convinced enough of them that it's in their best interest, and we've had wonderful collaborations in 11 studies so far. So what I'm going to concentrate on, next slide, is one example from the network to show you how we're getting close, but we still have a long way to go. Next slide. This protocol looked at comparing laser, next slide, which did cause improvement in vision, as shown on this slide, so that these are people in this trial who were given laser, and they, on average, had improvement in vision from their diabetic macular edema. Next slide. But we found that if we use an injectable drug to get rid of those growth factors, and it's an antibody to those growth factors, you could triple the improvement that was seen with laser. And that was whether we combined the drug with laser or used the drug alone. Next slide. We had tried another drug as well, corticosteroids. It didn't work quite as well because it had more side effects. Next slide. And it's true on these bottom 2 curves here in yellow and purple, those are steroids or laser, that you got improvement. That's 30% of the people improving. Next slide. But 50% improved with the growth factor antibodies. And it's not just how many people you can improve. The idea is catch these people before they lose vision. Next slide. Because only these drugs, next slide, leads to fewer than 5% losing any vision. The lines on top here in purple and yellow, that's with laser alone or laser with steroids. Unfortunately, those cause some loss in 15 or 20% of the people, but the injectable drugs, less than 5%. Lose any vision over 2 years, and now we've shown at least to 3 years, and hopefully by the end of this year we'll have 5-year data to know if we've really halted this problem. So that's why, we've come so far. Now that drug, or 2 of those drugs, are very expensive on either side here. The one on the left is aflibercept, the one on the right is ranibizumab. There's a very inexpensive drug, bevacizumab, but it's not made by the company to go into the eye, and the question is, okay, now you have a way of treating it, but you can't necessarily use that around the world. Would something less expensive work as well, and if not, how well does it work? And so the network's doing a trial now that will be out likely by the end of this year to tell us how these three compare. Now, finally, we're not too good at getting people who need this treatment from coming in. This shows you the prevalence of people that have diabetes in the United States based on a survey over the age of 40. Based on a good survey done by the CDC, it was about 20 million people in 2008. Next slide. And of those 20 million people, about 14 million have no diabetic retinopathy yet and have no macular edema. So we want to find them and say, make sure someone monitors you for this problem. Next slide. But about 5 million actually have some damage of diabetic retinopathy, but they don't have the swelling yet. They have no diabetic macular edema. We want to find those people and say, you already have some damage. Let's make sure we follow you each year and figure out if you get this edema. Next slide. But finally, there's about 840,000 people in the United States that have diabetic macular edema, a condition we now can treat. So we can treat it. So we looked at this survey and we said, how many of these people, and we just published this online 3 months ago, we said, how many of them know they have it? Because we can treat it. We would think it's solved. Next slide. So we looked at these people and we asked them 3 questions. Next slide. We said, have you been told by a doctor that diabetes has affected your eyes? When was the last time you saw a diabetes nurse educator or dietitian? When was the last time you had an eye exam in which the pupils were dilated? This would have made you temporally sensitive to light. And we had photographs on all these people, because some of them knew they had diabetes, some of them didn't. Some of them knew they had diabetic macular, some of them didn't. Next slide. And what we found, if you look on the left-hand side, in green are the people who have diabetic macular edema, the disease we can treat, and 45% of them said, yes, a doctor's told me that diabetes is affecting my eyes. But look at the right-hand side of this graph. 55% of the people who have diabetic macular edema were not told by a doctor that they have damage in their eyes from diabetes. So this is where we are so far. I suspect it's a worldwide problem. This is the first survey that's been done like this. We want to replicate it and see what our problems are around the world. Next slide. And we asked them, when's the last time you had a dilated eye exam? Look on the right-hand side. Those are the people with diabetic macular edema. 40% of them say it's been more than a year, and in the article we tell you that for half of them it's been never that they've had a dilated exam. But we found in this population survey, it's a good representation of the United States, that about 40% of them do not know that they have this damage in the back of their eye, nor have they had a dilated exam to find it. Next slide. So that's why I share this lecture with you today, to celebrate and to challenge. So the celebration is we're really close. We have now figured out ways. They're expensive. They're time-consuming. We'll figure out ways of getting it less expensive. We'll figure out ways of getting it less time-consuming. But we're still far away. Why? Because half of the people in the world don't know they have diabetes. And even people that know they have diabetes may have something we can treat and have no idea that it's going on. So we've got to figure out, the next step is how can we identify them, and how will we be able to reach out and stop a lot of this vision impairment and blindness, because I've told you that's a huge problem. And if they come in after they've gone blind, it's very hard, if not impossible, to reverse it. And so we have treatments that we can use now, and we're so close, but still far away. Thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you, Dr. Bressler. That was very enlightening. I think awareness is part of the most important part of the problem. I would like to now invite on stage Dr. Govindsamy Kumar Manikavil to moderate the question and answer session conducted by Dr. Bressler.
Thank you, Dr. Bressler. It was really a lovely talk. Yeah.
Okay, so good evening. I'm going to manage the questions. I'm going to be the moderator between the audience and Dr. Bressler. And I thank Dr. Bressler to have given one of the best talks. And he made both the ophthalmologist as well as lay public to understand diabetic retinopathy, and also said that how big a problem it is and how big it's going to grow and put the field of ophthalmology into all kinds of stress. Can we have this light cut off? Let's put the, okay. So, good evening.
Good evening.
I can't hear you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. So I would appreciate if each one of you asks one question so that we'll give opportunity for others to ask questions as well. So I have to squeeze all the questions in the next 5 minutes. That's the time I've been given, and therefore I'll try to moderate it. And someone who's going to ask the best question will get 10,000 rupees, okay? Okay, it's a joke. Right, so let us first start with Dr. Sunita. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Bressler, for that lovely talk. And I like the heading, which is like, we are so close, but still far. So, I mean, just as you just said, right, 55% of the patients who had diabetes were never told to go for an eye examination. We have the same scene in India. When we see patients in our OPD, when we ask them how long you have been diabetic, they come up with an answer, 20 years. So we ask them, when was your last eye examination? The answer is, we never had an eye examination. So I still don't understand why a physician has never told them to go for an eye checkup. I mean, how do we sort out this problem? I do understand partly that, yes, they might be like losing the patient to some other physician, but what is the fear? How can we overcome this thing? Because this is actually one of the basic problems that even we are facing. That in spite of giving so much of awareness to the patients, to the population, to the society, and the doctors, we still face this problem that patients are not being referred to the doctors, to the ophthalmologists. So what do you suggest for this? Because we have come so close, but really we are far.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And the study merely was designed to say, how big is the problem? And unfortunately, we learned it's a big problem. And I suspect, as I said, and your anecdote is in agreement, it's probably a big problem everywhere. So now, I think the next step is we have to get our colleagues together and brainstorm some ideas to find out, why is this happening? And it could be multifactorial. It may be that someone's telling them and they forget. It may be that we fail to continue to remind the internist or the nurse practitioner or whoever is taking care of them to continue to remind them every single time, is someone checking your retina? Because they can't do it. It requires either an image or a special photograph. So it can't be done by the person measuring your blood pressure. It's a unique measurement that has to be made, but they're not doing it. So I don't know why it's so high, and I think we can hypothesize some ideas, and the next step should be work all around the world and figure out what are the reasons. And they may differ in parts of the world, but I suspect there's a lot of common reasons as well. And if we can come up with strategies that will get even half of those people in, that's huge.
Thank you. Yeah, just
You want another one?
It's not a question actually, but because working with Dr. Natarajan has exposed me to a lot of ideas as to how to increase the compliance. So we have these, you just said that it can't be done by people who are measuring the blood pressures. So we have these non-Medriatic instruments which are handheld. Why can't a nurse be trained, right, to just take the image of the patient when sitting in a physician's room, send it to an ophthalmologist who's attached to that place, and say whether the patients actually need to follow up at this point of time or not. So that might tend to increase the patient compliance, cutting down the hospital visits. What do you suggest?
Sorry, Dr. Bressler. I would appreciate if you sort of repeat the question in one
I will
sentence.
repeat the question right. So the question was, how about trying something, for example, that has been tried around here where you have a portable camera, you take a picture, send it to an expert and say, is there a problem there or not? This may work, and the challenges to that are you don't get the feedback right away, and you have to pay an expert to read it. Now, granted, paying an expert to read it is more efficient than having that expert go door to door to where you're going. Those are clearly different costs. And we want to brainstorm even outside of that box. We want to figure out, could we have that image just put on a secure site that trained people around the world have said, oh, when I have 5 minutes, I'm going to just, for a penny, look at the image, and I've proven that I can grade them reliably. And we want to see if there's innovative ways of grading those images instantaneously, so while that social worker is there, who's been trained to take that photo, not the ophthalmologist, not the fellow, not the resident, but just a technician who's been trained to do that, can right there and then say, this says you might have a problem. Here's how we can connect you up. So these are potential solutions, and this is what we're thinking about.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. You can go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, a disclaimer, I'm not an ophthalmologist. Okay. And first of all, congratulations to Dr. Natarajan for his great work, and thank you, Dr. Bressler, for your talk. Like in oncology, we have tumor markers. So is there a way of predicting which patient will land up with diabetic retinopathy?
So the question is, as in tumors, there's often biomarkers that you can get from the blood and say, uh-oh, there's a problem in the prostate or colon cancer or something. We have something that's better or worse, I don't know. You can look right in the retina and tell, and it's 100% sensitive and specific in the right hands, but it requires a special image rather than a blood draw. So everyone can draw blood. Not everyone has these little devices, but we're getting there. And so we could draw blood to see if perhaps the person has markers that suggest they have a 40% risk after 12 years of getting retinopathy. But it's far more precise to just look in the eye. Okay. And that's why, in my opinion, a main direction to go is figure out very inexpensive, very efficient ways of imaging and say, is it there or not, and get that feedback to the person, and then get them to someone who can take care of it.
Maybe, do you want to add something about research in genetics and other fields?
Well, the genetics are very important. So that's not to take away from, is there a role for doing continued genetics research in this diabetic retinopathy? And the answer is yes. It is likely that there are certain genetic predispositions for some people when they're exposed to diabetes to be more likely to get the retinopathy. And this may give us clues as to how to slow it down or treat it in the first place. But we won't need those to diagnose who has it. We'll just look in the eye to say who has it. But the genetic predisposition may differ. There are people who have terrible kidney disease, and there's not a darn thing wrong with their retina, and vice versa. Terrible retina disease and nothing wrong with their kidney, and it's the same diabetes. So these are very fruitful areas of research to pursue.
Would you like to add a bit more about the other complications of diabetes as well, so that lay public...
Yes. So I mentioned the eye for two reasons. One, it happens to be what's on the top of most patients that have been surveyed, and that was just the U.S. survey I showed you, but in many surveys around the world. I can't tell you it's going to be true in every culture and every situation, but typically the loss of vision is the biggest problem. But there are many other problems that have to be dealt with, and some of them are social and some of them are physical. So the physical ones are that unfortunately the same blood sugar level can damage the small blood vessels not in the retina, but in the kidney. So that this is a very common cause of kidney damage or kidney failure, which secondarily can lead to very high blood pressure. This is a very common cause of damaging the small blood vessels in the heart, and a very common cause then of heart disease. And it can damage many other organs in the body. Now the social factors are also important to recognize. So people that need to treat this day in and day out never get a vacation. Every day, every part of their meal, they have to decide how much blood sugar are they going to increase by eating this meal or that meal? How much medicine do they have to take because of it? How do I adjust that based on, am I very active today, or is this a quiet sitting day? And they never get a break from it. Now, there's a lot of research being done to try to have closed loop systems that say, what's your blood sugar? Here's the insulin you need. But these are not perfected yet. We're closer. And that will at least perhaps release the burden for some people of having to check day in and day out. They could be giving a lecture like myself and have to stop and go to the side and check their blood sugar and inject with insulin and then come back up and finish the lecture. Fortunately, I did not have to do that, but that doesn't mean others, my colleagues that have diabetes, do have to do that. And that's just a tiny example of what it's like every day, every hour, every minute.
Yeah. Does it affect the nerve too?
Does it affect the nerves? So it has a problem with the nerves as well. So, for example, these small blood vessels nourish the nerves to your feet. And if you lose good circulation from the high blood sugar level to these blood vessels to the nerves to your feet, you may not feel when you bang your toe. You may then get an infection in the toe. It may not heal well afterwards. And so it can affect the peripheral nerves as well. Sometimes this just causes pain. So I think we've all had our sort of arm fall asleep, and as that's just the nerve not getting good blood flow, and it hurts a little bit. Well, imagine having that chronically all the time to your feet, and this is a problem that can develop as well.
Yeah. So,
Can I have one more?
yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. In India, we have this a problem where most of our majority of our population lives in the villages where they don't have access to an ophthalmologist. So is a good tight control of their blood sugars adequate enough for them to prevent
So the point is not everyone has access to eye care, but they might have access to general medical care. And so is good blood sugar good enough? And the answer is it's important because it reduces the risk of getting this, but even under the best control, some people still get this damage after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or whatever. And so we need to figure out how to get this access to everyone. You know, one of the mantras that came out from the Gates Foundation last week is that they said, look, there are fewer poor countries than there were before, and that's true. And if you look in 1960 and you look in 2014, the world has really changed. And I think as our colleagues and physicians and public health people and other people working in the field, we need to come up with ways of making it accessible around the world. It may require innovative ways, where, as I said, you don't have the doctor there, you have the image there, and you have the image graded somehow, and the feedback comes there. I think we can do it. We have to recognize the problem, and now we have to convince, and there's a lot of good people in here and elsewhere in the country, elsewhere on the continent, and then elsewhere in the world that I think can take this on. And so here we are. We want to take it on with all of you.
Okay. So would appreciate questions from lay people as well. But we'll go with you now. Okay. You wanted to ask, right? Yeah. Somebody hand over the mic. Just a minute.
Just to take these two questions forward, actually the government of Maharashtra is making available portable fundus cameras to people in the interiors where they may have access to an ophthalmologist but not a retina specialist. And these are the images are being taken and they are being transmitted to telemedicine cells in medical colleges where we have to actually go and assess them and then revert back. Unfortunately, either they are not trained well enough to take the fundus photographs or the patients do not come back to them when we give them the diagnosis or ask them to refer them to the higher centers. So already in a small way this is being started, as you were just mentioning, but the training probably is lacking, or patient compliance and follow-up. So
You bring up a good issue, and the point was that, well, there are some of these cameras being made available, and maybe there's an ophthalmologist there, but they're not a retina specialist. And this is true, and so we identify where these problems are, as we said, and it's like a business. We need to come up with innovative, efficient, economic ways of being able to take care of these problems. And maybe you don't need a retina specialist. Maybe you just need a retina specialist to listen to all of the new treatments coming out, and they make sure that everyone working around them or under them are implementing the best care. And as you may know, you have tremendous innovation in taking care of cataract in this country, and led the world in how do we do this, because we don't have enough ophthalmologists to do the cataract surgery. And your solutions are excellent, because you did figure out ways. It's still a big problem, and we need more ways, but it's still great. There are people in the United States that say, oh, I could never do that. Well, they're wrong. Of course they could do that. The cataract surgeries being done are as good or better than anything else. That depends often on volume, and that there's good oversight for all the care. So I think it's the same with diabetes and identifying damage from diabetes in the retina. There will be specialists who I think need to teach each other, need to work on improving the care, but they can disseminate that and then come up with ways that are safely and appropriately getting the treatments out there. And we hope everyone will work together on those solutions. In the network, we're going to work on it first in the United States. We have plenty of areas where we have patients not getting to care or can't afford the care. And I suspect a lot of those solutions will work elsewhere in the world. And then we'll want to work with people from all over the world on these challenges, both where they have good health care and where it's difficult to get the people to come in. Why don't they come in? How can we get them to come in? How can we convince them that this will be, in the long run, better? And as I said, even if you get 25% of them, and they keep working, and they maintain their self-esteem, and they don't get depressed, that's great for the world.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to ask Mr. Shivanandan if he has anything to ask.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I cannot thank you adequately for having come all the way from US to educate us about this. I can't ask you questions because I never met the other lady through you through Aditya. I never met the other lady. But I can say that what I have learned from your lecture today is very, very eye-opening. Most of the policemen do die at the age of 40, 41. And precisely you have given us the figures, 383 billion people suffering from diabetes in the world, and India seems to be the diabetic capital of the world. And even the younger children are all suffering from that. So I think, in my opinion, since the right to education has come in this country as a matter of government program, that all the children will have to go to school and study, and education has been made compulsory. Maybe all these factors which you have told, the facts that diabetes and the eyesight is related. Not many of us really know about it, but when we were educated, when we were getting educated. So these figures you gave are startling, and our government people have not been aware about it, and various departments have to be told that they have to work in tandem so that they can see that the people are adequately explained. Maybe we'll have to ask our government control, the Doordarshan, that is the TV, and various other people to take this to these people to tell them that prevention is better than cure. So from your figures which you gave, I really believe that rather than allowing it to happen and look for cheaper treatment, it is easier for us to teach, maybe the police training schools to start with. So my take home from your wonderful lecture is that we have to introduce this as a subject to the policemen in their training colleges, so that they are aware that when they get into diabetes and then depression and then high blood pressure, these are the three things we suffer from. And precisely you hit the nail on the head when you gave the figure of the age. 40 to 50 is the age where my men and officers suffered a lot. So I want to thank you actually. I'm not asking you a question. I should have to thank you for giving an eye-opening kind of a lecture. I was really thinking that it would be technically very heavy kind of a thing where I would learn anything, but you gave us a wonderful presentation, and even a layman like me would understand much of it because of the beautiful pictures and explanation. I basically stood up to say a big thank you from a common man on this country. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I agree 100%. We want to get this awareness out. The education is where it starts. And we're happy to help you and all other areas that can start with the police. And if another group and another group, they can set the example for the country and the world.
Neil, I just want to say that I flew of the Commissioner of Police in Thane and in Mumbai and made a free hospital for the policemen. And in that, he asked me when we have done a free action for them, particularly for diabetes. And also, when he was the Commissioner of Police in Mumbai, Director General, he made a hospital which is a 125-year-old regular hospital where he made ultra modern. He made it. Another friend donated a lot of money, something like 350 or more than 3.5 million rupees, and made a clinic. Somebody made a gift, and then we sent the doctor David. So hats off to him. But in spite of all that, still people suffer, and that's a problem. And they don't have time to come to the doctor, in spite of the doctors available in the doorstep.
So we won't give up.
So, clinical fellows, do you have any questions?
Dr. Halom had a comment. Dr. Halom, you are a microbiologist and you are the root cause for the meeting.
Thank you, sir. We typically have Dr. Bressler stand for the lecture to make it interesting, lucid, and at the same time understanding very clearly. In fact, nobody here would refuse those claims that you made in terms of India being the hub of diabetes, and at the same time, the upcoming DR epidemic that would set in as age grows by and diabetes grows. I just wanted to ask you one question. We have been talking the idea of home monitoring devices, especially for people who have been diagnosed with the disease and to prevent their burden in terms of follow-up. But are there any home monitoring devices, maybe for fundus or an eye check, which can be as popular as a glucose monitoring device currently? And how's the work progressing on this?
So the question is, are there home monitoring devices, just like there are home blood glucose monitoring devices that might pick up, for example, the damage going on in the retina? The technology is almost there. So you could have someone look into a binocular-like device, confirm that things are set up properly, get feedback, and send an image. Unlike blood glucose monitoring that goes daily or many times a day, you need only look sometimes once a year, twice a year, etc. So while we have the technology, we're not certain that we need to set that up logistically. And the harder part, I think, will be how do we economically get those images to someone to say yes or no? Since I did say it's a shame that 5 million people in the U.S., for example, have some damage to their retina from diabetes, but the flip side of that is 15 million don't. And so we don't need to touch them yet except to say, come back next year. So this is part of the problem. We're just learning the problem now, and so we're just coming up with ways of trying to approach it. And I totally agree with the previous comment. We have to come up with educational ways that work. We have to test them and say, what works to get the person in. So I think home monitoring is going to be very important as we talk, in the future about macular degeneration, because that can suddenly, from one day to the next, cause a problem in the retina, and you can't bring a person in every day to check. And we've made some strides in that, and I think that's going to get better over the next 5 years. For diabetes, probably we need to go logistically to some other steps, and
Okay. So why is that you came to Aditya Jyot? And what is that you're looking at collaborations, future work at Aditya Jyot?
So just say it again.
Okay, so the reason you came here, of course,
Oh, yeah.
etc. What? But besides that, what's the point? Are you looking at collaborative
Sure. Sure. So, what are we looking for to collaborate? We take it on as our responsibility to figure out ways of solving these problems, to reduce the suffering that goes on in the world so these people can be more productive through age 20 to 70 onward, because this is one of our huge medical problems. And so we want to introduce it around the world because there's no monopoly on ideas. There are ideas that come from anyone and everyone, and then one idea gets tweaked a little and it gets improved, and soon it's nobody's idea and everybody's idea. So we want to present this information. We've set up systems that are available around the world to make sure people are aware of them, and then we want to work with the people that would find it interesting to take on and work with. So we hope that, people here and elsewhere in the country and elsewhere in the world will say, okay, I have something that might work on that, and we figure out how to do it. The network, for example, we hope will go international. We're tiptoeing into Canada. You might not consider that international, but I can tell you the legal policies we have to go through make it pretty tough to extend the network, but that's the first step. Okay, then we'll go to some other English-speaking countries, because that'll be easier, and there's a lot of English spoken here, so I'm sure we'll be knocking on the door in no time. We hope that the people that you train will have an opportunity to work on projects with others around the world, and we hope that includes our university as well. Our university has been very fortunate in concentrating on great clinical care and research at the same time, and that's how it's grown to, for example, our ophthalmology department has 130 full-time faculty. The average ophthalmology department in the U.S. is 8 full-time faculty, so this is a big enterprise from which we come. But we're not stopping. We want to keep working on this. So we enjoy coming here. We were thrilled and honored to give the lecture, but just as thrilled to see the country, share memories with everybody, and maybe work some more on these challenges. So I can't thank you enough. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bressler, for the curiosity. And I hope that you thank us for the greatest gift from India. Okay. Thank you.
And
Dr. Radhika Krishnan.
Thank you. Thanks, Laila. I always feel that giving vote of thanks it gives me an opportunity to express gratitude and look forward to receiving more. So at the outset, I would like to thank all of you who took time to be with us and encourage us in this initiative as we try and spread awareness amongst the general population about various medical conditions, and in this drive that we are doing to our fight against the prevention of blindness. First, I would like to thank Dr. Neil Bressler and Dr. Susan Bressler, ever gracious, because she very readily and affably agreed to accompany him on this trip. So thank you both for taking time off from your very hectic schedules to be with us. And of course, on behalf of Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital and the family of Dr. Sundaram, we thank Dr. Bressler for graciously accepting this Endowment Award. Thank you, sir. And of course, we are very happy and lucky to have Dr. Sundaram here with us. At this age, it really remains to be seen how very enthusiastic that he is about all these activities, especially when it pertains to education, to the common man, to the students. So thank you, Dr. Sundaram, for being here and making this possible. And we have our friend and supporter, Mr. D. Shivanandan, who is also a trustee of the Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes. Thank you, sir, for being with us. For all of you, Mr. Junjanwala, for all the other people who have made the effort to be here with us, and of course my colleagues, Dr. Kumar, Mr. Ravi, and all of you from Aditya Jyot Hospital, and my team from the Aditya Jyot Foundation. And of course, Laila, many of you would not know that she is in fact a very famous actress from the South. She's acted in several movies, and we are very grateful to her for agreeing to host the program today. And of course, last but not the least, the very quiet Dr. Alok, the behind-the-scenes man. Thank you, Alok, and A-Team Global for giving us the support to make this possible. Thank you very much.